In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. Hello, it is Lucas Kirsch, your favorite soon-to-be Orthodox YouTuber. Here today with a rant on the school system and why the school system is failing society in general. This is going to be one of a more chill video. It's going to be more Nicholas type video, if you know what I'm talking about. He's my fellow Ortho YouTuber that I collab with on occasion. And I'm going to be talking about today why the school system fails children. I actually bring up a book that has a quote about that. This is going to be a longer type video, so if you have a good attention span, you should like this video. Hopefully, you have a good attention span. Obviously. So the school system has, I'm going to also talk about my experience as well. The school system has been failing children for years. The school system is very outdated. It's outdated since the industrial age ended, which was relatively recently, but I suppose it's 30 years ago now, so. But the school system, or I'm going to say the public school system, I'm going to clarify, because if we're talking about school systems, I think the best school system to send your kids to would be either, I wouldn't say homeschool actually, because homeschooling makes your kids very isolated and very just awkward people, and they need to have social connections. Obviously they need to know what to do, but the school system is not teaching. And also obviously the Orthodox private schools, that's most likely what I will send my kids to, is an Orthodox private school. It just makes more sense. That is a good school. You are learning good values. I suppose it could be reformed in the sense of what you're actually learning, secular wise. But so this is going to be largely unscripted, obviously, so it's going to be kind of a rant. However, I'm going to put the water away. Go. I just had dinner. It was really good. It was rotisserie chicken. That was very good. Anyways, so the school system, I'm hanging up on that call. So the school system has been failing children for years now. It's obvious. The society that we are currently living in partially has to do with the rise of the school system just being terrible. It also could be, obviously, with the increased secularization and increased... Hold on, I gotta answer this call. Hold on. Okay, I didn't end my video. Great. So, how do I say this? The school system essentially is a business. What a business does is it maximizes profit. Or at least if we're talking about a modern American style business, maximizes profit. It serves only the corporate entity and the higher ups, the higher echelons of the business. It uses the lower echelons of the business it exploits them and takes their profit. Obviously, we all know how businesses work. We all know how that kind of business works. I'm not a communist, don't get me wrong. I believe in working hard, becoming successful. Obviously, I have my own YouTube channel. That's not a big flex or anything, but I do think making money is not a bad thing. I think it is a good thing. You provide for your family. But the society we currently live in has so many educated but blind people, not to sound like Robert Kiyosaki, but there are so many educated but blind people in our society today, financially blind, spiritually blind, because the school system we are brought up in does not teach religious values or common sense at all. We are being brought up to hate God in a sense, or to stray away from God, because we are not putting him at the center of our life, and we are focusing on other less important matters this is more a cultural thing, societal thing that has been coming about since the 1920s, 1960s. Those eras have been drifting towards a progressivization which is economically good, but socially not good. And again, I'm not a communist, I'm not a socialist, Obviously, communism and socialism have their issues. Socialism has a few good ideas, but that's about it. Same with capitalism. All economic theories fall apart eventually because of human greed and all of that. But what am I getting into about the school system? Because I've been yapping about nothing for about like 5 minutes. You know what I'm saying? So, the school system essentially is just a machine that outputs workers. It takes in, it's like a refinery. It takes in something and it produces something else. It takes in sugar and produces rum. Takes in wheat, produces beer, something like that. Which might be not be good to use those because those are more liabilities than assets. But it creates a asset for the upper echelon of society instead of creating the idea that you can create your own assets. It makes you into an asset, which is why the school system is so not. That's one of the reasons why the school system is failing, or essentially it's failing their students. There's a study or something that said like 1 in 4 people who graduate school are not technically literate, which is insane to think about because of how are we graduating these people if they're not illiterate? I know a few people in my school who are like just not smart people and they're graduating. I'm like, how are you graduating? That doesn't make any sense to me. Obviously, graduating is not everything. Unless you want to become like a doctor or lawyer or something like that. Obviously, if you want to become a doctor or lawyer, then you need school. Obviously, I'm not saying that the school system is completely wrong. I'm just saying there's a lot of flaws with it we need to address. So the increased progressivization and liberalism, and I don't mean like a good classical like liberalism, I mean like extreme progressive like secularism that we are seeing in our modern school system, which is, I'm just going to say bad because there's a lot of people who like to float around the term and float around, oh, well, it's not really bad. Well, come on, it is bad. What is happening in our school system today? And it's just a form of social conditioning. It conditions you to become an asset for somebody else. And personally, as somebody who wants to be the head of my own family, how is that going to help me raise a family? I don't know. That gets me to another point. School does not teach you how to have a family. School does not teach you anything you actually need to know unless you're becoming a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer. If you're not becoming one of those three and you go to college, what are you doing? Let's be honest. If you go to school to become like some liberal scientist or some kind of like progressive arts, like do you really need to go to college to become a music like professor? Hamza talked about this in one of his videos. I'm not going to promote or de-promote Hamza. I don't really know much about him. But I was watching one of his videos with my friend Nick, which we do collabs together. And he said, what Hamza said is that, I'm low-key blanking, shoot. He said something about this. He said that professors have to fail they have to fail essentially what they're learning, or else why would they become a professor? And he also said that when he got a college degree, he tried, hold on, I'm fixing my flag on my desk. When he got a college degree, he was competing with people who were 40 and 50 and didn't have college degrees, or did have college degrees or something. And he was just baffled in how he could get a super, super low paying job as like 20,000 USD or something like that. It was 17,000 pounds or something like that. And it was some crazy number, like some crazy low number. And he's like, even a McDonald's employee or something could make that, which is just incredible to think about. We are being conditioned by a system. I'm not going to be one of those like nihilists who says like, oh, well, you can't really, I don't know. I'm not going to be a nihilist about this because obviously there are things we can do, which I'm going to go on about later in the video. But we are entering, this is just like the outside. I'm not even into like the details about why the school system is failing. It is not creating good young men. The school system, here, hold on, I'm actually going to do this. We're going to do, just writing something down just for YouTube Shorts reasons. So we are not learning how to raise a family. I'm going to direct this towards men and then women. So men, why is my phone tipping? I saw that. Men are being taught that it is okay to give up. It is okay to... That even feels wrong. I'm resting this on a bobblehead, so if it starts like bobbling, then that's probably why. And we're ruining the setup. Sorry, by the way, this is my first like long-term video. I apologize if this isn't just rambling. So, men have been taught that it is okay to give up. It is okay to not try. It is okay to just be... It is okay just to be you. And it is okay not to try to be anything different, not try to be better. I have found, at least in my experience, that the people who are the most good looking, at least by like they try, like in the gym, they're like 6 days a week working 3 hours a day at like whatever, versus like somebody who is really good at school. I found that it's more, I don't want to say they have a better personality, but I just want to say that people who look better and they don't do well in school, and people who are just like school nerds, the people who look better and are bad at school do better. And it's like, there's a lot of people who are like complaining online, and they're like, oh, well, life's not fair. I was like, well, obviously life is not... I don't like to say life is not fair, because life, obviously there's certain circumstances you cannot choose, like where you're born, who you're born to, that kind of stuff, what your environment you're in. But you can control yourself. And, wow, I'm really rambling. We're going to talk about the father and mother situation. So it does not teach young men how to be men. It teaches men how to be women. It's somewhat controversial to say that, but at the same time, who cares? I don't care what you think about me, I don't know. And if you think I'm great, then that's crazy. I appreciate that. That's very nice. But I have reached a point on this channel where I do not care basically what any commentators think, because essentially YouTube is run by AI at this point, and I don't really know who's real, who's not. Obviously, if you're real and you're watching all this way in the video, then I want to say thank you, because you really support my channel. I want to say thank you a lot for watching my channel, stuff like that. But anyways, it fails men, but also puts a very hyper fixated just view on... Where am I going with this? I was like, before I got into this, I was super like prepared. I exactly knew what I wanted to say. Now I'm just blanking. It ruins, well, it also ruins testosterone, but I'm going to get into that later about the environment thing. But it ruins women as mothers. This is going to be a little controversial, but it's actually true. If women focus solely on the workforce, solely on getting a job, solely on getting a career, they statistically have less and less kids. If you look at places like Africa and like Southeast Asia, there are less women who are going to university and to getting degrees and stuff and focusing on the careers, and they're focused on being mothers. And they tend to have a lot more kids. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, because that's good for populating the earth, because we are called as Christians to populate the earth. But what I'm saying is that there are, in many Western societies today, women are only focusing on careers, and they have like 1 or 2 kids. I'm not obviously saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying if we depopulating is really bad for the economy, for obviously religious reasons. And I'm not going to get into like some kind of Alex Jones rant about the elites, but there's a big thing about the Rockefellers on their website talking about how depopulation is a good thing, and obviously it's not. Anyone with common sense knows depopulation is not a good thing. And it's scary to think that there are people out there who want to depopulate. It's scary to think that. So, but I mean, obviously, going into like Stoic thought, what can we do about that? Just have more kids, I guess. But in many Western societies, there's a lot of depopulation going on. You can look at statistics. You can obviously be like, well, no, it's not actually, because it's not. Or you could say it's a good thing. But obviously, if you look at statistics, it is a common problem happening. It's happening in France, I believe, a lot. I knew about this like 4 years ago. The France is having a lot. They have like a terrible birth rate. I think Italy has a really bad birth rate too. But where's I going with this? And also, if women are, so my point is that I think women should focus on having kids rather than having a career. Obviously, I'm not saying you should not be able to have a career. I'm saying that should be perfectly, you should be able to have a career if you want to have a career. But I'm saying socially and culturally, we should have more of a higher emphasis on mothers. I think we should have tax benefits for mothers. I think we should have just the more kids you have, it's just easier to have kids, because in this fast economy, in this fast world, we are having less and less kids, and it is causing more depression, obviously, in this hyper competitive world, obviously, as like Andrew Tate likes to say. We are shifting towards just bad things. But also, economically, it makes more sense for women to be mothers and for men to focus on providing for the family. Because I'm not saying men should just sit around and do nothing, obviously. That's a bad thing. That's bad for mental health. That's bad for physical health. Men should obviously be out there working hard. But if we have both men and women all getting degrees, all going to school, at least university, it does two negative effects for the economy, but it's actually good for businesses. So businesses are promoting going to university. So number one, it doubles the workforce, which means you can pay people half of what they're making. And so essentially, it is impossible to be a stay-at-home mom if this is the case. So it doubles the workforce, which is bad. Everyone knows this is bad for the economy. And then two, where was I going with this? I was really on fire when I was thinking about this. It doubles the workforce, which is bad for the economy. I'm going to say that. And so it's not good for morality, it's not good for society, and it's also not good for the economy. So why are we allowing this to happen? Why are we allowing society to rot out as a whole? Well, because money. Because corporations want money. Because politicians want money. You can say some politicians good, some politicians bad. They're all the same. If you look at anything if you look at anything they say, there's one party who's like more progressive, one party's more conservative. They're just puffed up versions of the same person. It's like putting makeup on a man to make him look like a woman. It's basically just the same person. It's the same gender, essentially. So, what else does school fail? So I think school, in some ways, is like a prison. Because if you look at how prisons are run, even my school is designed by a prison architect for crowd control, which is just a very dystopian outtake on how you should design a school. Obviously, I know why they did that. It's not very hard to figure out why they would design it for crowd control. But it's a very dystopian look on life. And because schools are so dystopian, you're producing more dystopian, nihilistic thinking students. And that's obviously not good for anybody. If you have common sense. I'm not going to be some kind of Jay Dyer-like figure in here. I'm not going to be... This is just my personal opinion. I'm tired of hearing... Hold on, I gotta answer this. 8:30. Having a friend over recording with this stuff. This bobblehead is weird shaped. So, okay. Well, I'll clean that up later. Hold on 1 second. Pardon me. Excuse me, let's say. Oh, that's where it went. school doesn't also teach you like anything. It doesn't teach you morals. It doesn't teach you how to file taxes. It doesn't teach you how to raise kids. It doesn't teach you anything that actually matters. What it teaches you is useless information. Obviously, you could argue that, oh, well, learning useful information is really good for X or Y or getting a job. And that's such an outdated and boring answer. Nobody wants to hear that you're going to use Pythag or some kind of math garbage to get a trade job as a plumber. I mean, obviously, there's going to be some cases. I don't want to sound stupid saying that because there's going to be some cases where you're going to need math. Obviously, basic math is very important to know, multiplication, division. But beyond that, once you get to like complex math, unless you're going to be some kind of like aerospace engineer or some kind of like mad, crazy scientist, what are you going to use Pythag for if you become an entrepreneur? And then someone's going to, the commentator, be like, well, this X, Y, Z, but come on. And then the class I don't see any use for is history. Obviously, history is important because basic history is important. Detailed, very, very detailed history. Obviously, I like history. I think a lot of Orthodox people or Orthodox-leaning people like history. Obviously, I'm a very big, I don't want to say history nerd because I'm not really a history nerd, but I like history. But I think history is put off as so boring by the schools. That's just an example. But the school system nowadays just has the most boring, like, they teach the most boring way possible. Or just stupid way possible. Like, I took French my first year of high school, and I could not stand that class. I thought I just wanted to leave terribly, so I ended up switching out to German. It worked a lot better. But I thought French was going to be a fun class because I wanted to learn French. And now I'm learning Ukrainian, so it doesn't really matter. But anyways, let me get some water because I'm low-key thirsty. Well, anyways, so school isn't really teaching anything that actually matters. School is failing traditional gender norms. School is also just terrible for people. The people in school do not care about you at all. Let's be honest. You can say, oh, well, my counselor really does. Like, no, they do not. They care about one thing. We all know they care about that thing. They care about their career more than you. That's just how it works. You can sugarcoat it all you want, but that's just how it is. And school, at least the school system, the public school system, is what I'm mainly talking about here. It's just terrible for mental health. You put so much unnecessary stress on something that doesn't even matter, something you don't even want to do. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are just demotivated, but people who are motivated don't like school either. That's why you see people like Robert Kiyosaki failing out of school. Like, people who are really smart, or at least people who society say are smart, just drop out of school because they find it not interesting. Or they don't care. Because if you're not going to become a doctor, lawyer, and engineer, do you really need school? Someone's going to be like, well, yes, you do, but no, you don't. Because school is just a business to produce assets. And that is, everybody knows that. School is just a waste of time, taking your focus away from God, taking your focus away from your family. I'm not going to say career because that's a very broad term. But it is keeping people into a almost slave-like mindset. And there's a lot of mental health, like, messed up people nowadays. Obviously, this is because of the rise of social media. This is because of the lack of religion. This is because of the lack of just, like, father figures and mother figures and all of that, which is bad. But it's also because of school. Because school is placing such an unnecessary stress on your life. And nobody is saying that it is a bad thing. You are just expected to do well in school, which does not matter. You are teaching people that it is not you, the school system. The school system is teaching people that things that matter don't matter, and you're confusing them. And that's why even my math teacher, he's so messed up about the system and so messed up about everything. And I'm really losing my train of thought today. I'm so tired, I swear. Anyways, where was I going with that? There are people with a lot of mental issues. Obviously, this is because of the rise of social. Whoa. This is the rise of social media, all that kind of stuff. But it's also the school system. This, I don't know. I have to have it on my charger. So just fixing my setup. That was a pencil sharpener, by the way. This is a pencil sharpener I got on an island. It's pretty tough. But anyways, school is just bad for your mental health. Like, they don't care about you as a person. And if you have an environment of just people who are terrible people and they don't care about you, you're just going to have a negative self-view of yourself. And the only way you can really fix that is by leaving. So, well, I'm going to actually talk about reasons why you can fix that, or how you can at least solve these issues. Stop texting. I'm trying to do a video. Anyways, school is just teaching people to be terrible people because money. There are people who are really messed up, and this school system does not care about them. They need some kind of, I don't want to say there's a hierarchy in schools, but a lot of times there is. Mostly based off of like looks and whatever, and just personality, I guess. This is obviously because school is a parallel of real life, because real life is, or school is a parallel of broader society, because broader society comes from school. So school is where you input, where you change people to be a certain way, you mold them. And if we talk about people with like crazy autism and ADHD and stuff like that, obviously that's because of either just bad practices of the mother who was pregnant, or because of medical issues. There's a lot of reasons why that could be. A lot of the reason there's so much like increase of all this stuff is because of the bad food we're eating, which I could talk about in a different video, which the school system is putting out bad food. Everybody knows that. But, pardon. What was I going to say? School just does not want to rehabilitate these people. School is like a modern, not rehabilitating prison. I am personally a person who is for rehabilitating criminals. It's not really a big, controversial statement. Obviously, there's some people who cannot be because of crazy mental things. But I think at the best, we should try to rehabilitate criminals because they're, human. And we should serve God who cares about humanity, so we should also care about humanity. But school does not want to rehabilitate. They just want to keep the higher echelons high and the lower echelons low. They want to keep the rich rich and the poor poor. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poor, as they say. They do not want to create. They don't want to upset the balance, I suppose. And I guess this is fair. If you don't work hard, obviously you're going to be lower in the echelon. And if you work harder, at least you work smarter, you're going to be in the higher echelon. Which is just how natural human biology works, I suppose. So what am I saying? So, school does not want to teach people how to become better people, is what I'm trying to go, what I'm trying to get at here. School teaches people useless information that does not help them with their careers, or not careers, with their family life, with their home life. They don't teach them anything really important unless they're becoming a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. That's my biggest statement. I want to say, praise Christ, Hopefully I didn't say anything too controversial. Hopefully this channel is still up. And I just want to say God bless you for watching all the way this video. I am so tired. Holy, I need to go to bed. Get some good sleep. Good night. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I will see you later. Praise Christ.